Enemy mech destroyed. Primary objective successful. Proceed to dust-off zone for extraction. Sensors indicate friendly dropship has entered atmosphere. ETA dropship 1 minute. Shutdown sequence initiated.
The views and opinions expressed on the show are those of the guests or hosts, and not necessarily those of the advertisers, networks, platforms, or stations. Warning that the content of the show may not be suitable for all audiences, and that viewer discretion is advised. The show does not intend to provide medical, legal, or financial advice, and viewers or listeners should consult with a professional before making any decisions based on the information presented.
What's that?
You had a player open.
A player.
Yeah, or maybe you got your mic also turned on for the camera. Got like,
all right.
Just to give you a heads up. Sorry about that. I just noticed that.
Oh. How is it now? Are we looking good?
Sounds great.
All right.
This is the Paranormal Intelligence Agency radio show with Jack Carey.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. I'm your host, Jack Carey, and we are broadcasting from 300 feet deep in an abandoned nuclear missile silo somewhere in the post-apocalyptic wastelands of the Dakota Territories. And as always, I'm joined by the paranormal crime-fighting duo, Daisy and the Sundance Kid. I'm going to try to get a picture for the crowd out there. This crew is world famous. Here we go. That is security in the silo tonight. And high above us, just today, was a rampaging, rabid, roaming, throwing a fit dog man, tearing up the town. He ate the farmer's chickens, and there's a litter of puppies on the way. So tonight's subject matter, we're kind of going to hop around just a little bit. We've got some interesting stuff this week as far as, we got fresh intelligence coming in on a couple of different fronts. At the same time, I'm sitting here in the bunker, the silo, and I'm got all kinds of intelligence feeds that are coming my way that I wanted to share with you guys. So, let's see here. But we're going to be talking about 3i Atlas. We've got some brand new intelligence on 3i Atlas that is coming in fresh off the wires from the world's top dog in the remote viewing world. And on top of that, we've got some fresh intelligence coming out of Yosemite. Let's see here. There we go. I got multiple feeds going on here. So, but we have an eyewitness that has basically put up some photographs of what appears to be the exact thing that we think might be causing a lot of disappearances in the national park system, and that is the idea that in certain areas in these national park system, all around North America, and in fact park systems really all around the world, there are usually located in mountainous areas. It's usually in these mountainous areas that you have high quartz crystal deposits, limestone, running water. All of those things create electromagnetic fields that are strong enough that, according to theoretical physics, you could generate an electromagnetic field strong enough to literally rip a hole or tear a rip in the membrane that separates this dimension from other dimensions. That might sound completely fantastical to many people, However, it's something that is openly discussed by our physicists today, including Michio Kaku at New York University, who has talked about it extensively and written about it. And the idea that not only are there other dimensions, and this really is kind of ties us into tonight's Cryptid Corner, is the fact that these physicists have speculated openly in hushed conferences around the world where you have established academia talking about if there are other dimensions, and they're pretty much absolutely sure that there are creatures more than likely living on those dimensions. And if there are creatures living on those dimensions, at least some of them would have been smart enough, evolved enough by now to actually figure out a way into this dimension. And that figures prominently really into one of our main subjects tonight, which is paranormal in the news. As usual on this show, all these rabbit holes are going to kind of, well, they just sort of run into each other if you go deep enough. And that's really what's going on right now. We recently had the Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna on the Joe Rogan podcast. Amazing interview. She openly, publicly admitted that she had been taken into a SCIF, which is a facility that houses all of our most top secret documents, and she was shown, as far as she is personally concerned, absolute, undeniable, indisputable proof that we are in possession of alien technology. And what's even more interesting than that, she says that it came from another dimension. She says the documents that she was shown absolutely indicate that these things originate from another dimension. And so we're going to have to really... Uh-oh, that's Silo Security. Must be that dog man. But we have to entertain the notion that she's right, and she's not lying to the public and, taking a risk like that for no reason. Let's take her at her word that she really was shown indisputable proof that the technology that they have in their possession behind the scenes is from another dimension. Think about that. The implications of that are huge, but she also went on to say that, according to what she saw, it was like us traveling back in time and leaving an iPhone with a clan of cavemen and expecting them to replicate it. That's what they were dealt with. And although, yes, they have been able to not necessarily back engineer, but they've been able to get new, fresh ideas of how to develop advanced technology, which led to fiber optics, which led to all kinds of new alloys and fabrics and night vision and bulletproof vest and all kinds of stuff. It led to a huge amount of technology that would not exist otherwise. However, it is that advanced. It's so advanced that the people that have been put into charge of keeping it all a secret are too inept and too, they're cavemen with this technology. They don't know where to even begin to back engineer something like that. They can get really cool, great ideas, and the Navy has developed a number of UFO patents, which I covered on a previous broadcast, which might be waiting for 3i Atlas to show up, which is another major paranormal in the news happening right now. And I would remind everybody that going back many, many broadcasts now over the summer, I've been talking about the WebBot's predictions. It's predictions for this Summer, which it refers to as the summer of emergence, is the time when, going into the fall now, you're going to begin to see a ton of attention being put on the idea that the aliens are here. No other way to put it than that. The world's attention seems to turn towards the alien presence on this planet, and that is perfectly timed, coinciding with the arrival of a new stellar body that is being called 3I Atlas, and which is now beginning to make mainstream media that this thing has all of the appearances of an alien ship. Not a comet, not an asteroid. It's an alien ship. They think it may even be nuclear powered, and it's emitting its own light, and it is traveling on a direct path to the Earth at about 136,000 miles per minute. So that is some pretty fast travel time, and yet I speculated previously that if this is an alien ship, it appears to be using a technology which may be less than the type of exotic alien technology we already have in our possession. And if that led to the Navy UFO patents, could it be that if this is a hostile alien ship of some kind, which is also being speculated about, then it might be showing up for a real street fight? Might have a real problem on its hands when it gets here, if in fact it is hostile in nature. There's no way to know till it gets here. And with that comes fresh intelligence, which you're likely to only get on this show in this, well, context anyway. And that is that the world's #1 remote viewer, a guy who originates from the CIA's original Stargate program. He has a pedigree going back that far, and who has published hit after hit after hit. He has made himself extremely wealthy using remote viewing to predict cryptocurrency prices, and now lives in a multi-million-dollar property in Honolulu where he does remote viewing for clients, and you can find him at the Future Forecasting Group. His name is Dick Allgeier. Mr. Allgeier was fed recently a blind target. He was given nothing but a serial number. The serial number was like A193PQR2P. That's it. That's all he got. It's a serial number that the person who chooses the target randomly selects. Has no reference to the target whatsoever. He was given that serial number as a target, and he recently remote viewed it, and he has come out with his findings. And it turns out that the target he was fed was 3I Atlas. Go figure. And what did he find out from his remote viewing? Well, he states that he was instantaneously taken to the object. He could see it clearly. This object was alien in nature. It is on a path to the Earth, and more shocking than really anything else that he was able to determine is that way, way off at a point in interstellar space, this thing is being directed here by a type of tractor beam. Think about that. A high exotic energy beam of some kind is being projected to that object to get it to us. Now that's interesting stuff, considering that I also recently reported on a previous broadcast that this stellar body, basically this 3I Atlas, is coinciding perfectly with ancient predictions that the Nomos in Western Africa have, which is a Stone Age tribe that received information from a non-human intelligence of some kind, and I covered the full story of the Nomos and their knowledge of the Sirius star system, but they have a belief that the Nomos would return one day, and they call that day the Day of the Fish. And when the author of the book, The Sirius Mystery, a Dr. Robert Temple, who is a renowned scientist in Europe, published The Sirius Mystery, he was harassed by intelligence agencies all over the world because of it. The fact that these guys had the knowledge that they had and had predicted a return of these beings, a day when they would rule from the seas, had to raise a lot of blood pressure in a lot of different power structures around the planet. And you have to remember that a book like that is something intelligence agencies pay a lot of attention to. Then you have ancient prophecies pointing to a possible return of the Anunnaki. Could it be that the Anunnaki will return? You have the Webbot referring to the Elohim who were here on the planet and who ruled ruthlessly. That was something that was documented in the Bible and documented in the book of Enoch. You have the Zulu tribesmen, Credo Mutwa, the guy who David Icke discovered, who was the last surviving oral history teller of the Zulu people from a long lineage of oral history keepers from a time when the missionaries were killing off all of their historians, trying to Christianize them and, convert them, the so-called savages, into their religion. They would kill off anything having to do with their belief system or their history or anything else and try to replace that. And when that happened to the Zulu people, they had a group of men who kind of went underground, very much like a Masonic brotherhood, who kept the secrets alive, that ended up becoming encapsulated in a single surviving individual. His name was Credo Mutwa. He is passed now, but he said that there was a memory, an oral history memory of a time when aliens had ruled all through Africa, and they were known as the Shatari, and they had reptilian aspects to them. Could it be that the Shatari are returning? Very interesting stuff. So we have 3i Atlas. It's headed this way. The world's greatest remote viewer blindly targets it, and he says, yeah, not only is it headed this way, but it's being directed by a tractor beam of some kind that you might see in a sci-fi movie. You got A.V. Loeb over at Harvard screaming to anybody that'll listen that this thing is an alien craft, and that it appears as though it may be connected to the alien probe Oumuamua, which he had previously detected using the facility in Hawaii, hence its Hawaiian name. Oumuamua means like distant wanderer or distant messenger, or something like that. And he believes that Oumuamua, when it came through, was an alien probe. Looks like the alien probe detected what it was sent to detect on this planet, and when it did, it seems to have sent a signal of some kind to this other stellar body, this 3i Atlas, and it is headed this way, and it is the size of Manhattan. It's 7 miles across. Just today, and you can Google this, Live Science ran an article about how strange 3i Atlas appears to be. Has oxygen ratios and things like that that they can read that match no known asteroid or comet. So 3i Atlas is going to get here in November. And that's a time when the Webbot said you're going to have major upheaval change take place. That change comes in the form of various kinds of ontological shock and what it describes as being a singularity of understanding. In other words, what it's saying is that when you introduce an outside force into a bubble, which is what our society is, that bubble pops. All of the aspects of that society that's encapsulated within the bubble, like its economy based on petrol fuels, its belief systems based on geographic locational religions, things like that, just absolutely get destroyed. It's just a byproduct. And it's called ontological shock. And ontological shock is very real. And it wouldn't be that big a deal if everybody today was walking around and having conversations that you could hear out loud about the alien presence on this planet, because then they would be warming up their psyches to the idea, the eventuality of accepting that as reality. Right now, they're not doing anything like that. They will duck, dodge, and come up with any kind of excuse possible not to entertain the notion that they're going to have to change their belief systems. Anything. Because that is psychologically painful in a way that can hardly even be described in words to human beings. So, ontological shock is real, and it has occurred in the past. We have examples of our own societies on this planet that suffered ontological shock when they experienced new human societies. Imagine experiencing a non-human society. When ontological shock takes place, often the underlying society collapses. You know, plug in the Maya, plug in all the South American civilizations, and many others all through history that had their belief systems wiped out right before the collapse of the society. That is what we potentially face. It's a very real threat, and it's something that the powers that be are quite aware of. We also have a situation coming out of an intelligence stream through Ross Coulthard's connections, stating that he has a source within the intelligence community that's telling him that the Chinese have made a major advancement utilizing some of this interdimensional technology, which they were able to recuperate from some crash somewhere. And that we could very well suffer a cosmic 9/11-like event where they just show up, surprise us with a super weapon like you can't even imagine, and just brings the world to its knees, and everybody becomes a subject of the Chinese Communist Party at that stage. Those are the stakes. According to the, intelligence sources that Coulthard has developed, and he is a world-class journalist, that's what they're telling him. And whether that's just fear-mongering to try to keep perpetrating a secret against humanity and against the American people as a way to cover up past crimes and things like that, that's quite possible. But it's also quite possible that his sources are telling him the truth. That's just the weird, complicated type of reality matrix that we find ourselves within. So, but this week, I've had a couple of really interesting things sent to me, and I thought we would discuss this idea of portals, crystal quartz deposits in the national park system, and the idea, this interdimensional idea that it could be these portals are opening and people are just walking off into them and disappearing forever. Because the photographs I just received seem to be world-class photographs of exactly one of these portals opening up on a trail in Yosemite. And that's something I'll try to cut in later, but it's interesting because Missing 411 has become a huge phenomenon, and David Paulides has written like 10 best-selling books all on these missing person cases. We're going to try to look at that from the macro viewpoint tonight and tie it in with current events. So stay with me, and we'll get to that right after our break.
I'm Sarah, and this is my story.
I'm Ellen, and this is my story.
One night, I was at a bar. I was having fun with my friends.
I
had one too many drinks.
I
got behind the wheel to go home.
I got a cab to go home.
All of a sudden, from out of nowhere, a squirrel ran across the road.
It
happened so quickly, I barely had time to react.
The cabbie barely had time to react.
I swerved.
The cab swerved.
I can't believe it. I hit a guy.
I cannot believe it. The cabbie just missed a guy.
I wish I took a cab.
Thank goodness I took a cab.
You have the choice to save a life. Don't drive buzzed. It's a decision you'll never regret. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
Shadows creep, monsters leave. In the woods, strange voices. Shadows creep in the woods, monsters leave. In the woods, bright noises. Mystical. Airwaves, mystical. Mystical. Alien overlord. From ancient times to modern days, legends of creatures in sudden disarray. Hear them speak through frequencies. Alien connections. Break it out, truth untold. To it in cosmic mystery. Dark woods where legends breathe. Paranormal whispers, can you believe? Bigfoot strikes through the veils. Dark and howls in the midnight tale. From the static, revelations pour. Portals open, dimensions roll. night under starry skies. Echoes of the truth, no disguise. Cryptid shadows creeping near. Through the static, voices clear. Dark woods where legends breathe. Paranormal whispers. Can you believe? It's the Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio. Whoa. Wednesday nights, enjoy the show. It's how we spend our Wednesday nights. Yay! It's crank the dial and dim the show. It's how we spend our Wednesday nights.
Welcome back, everybody, to Paranormal Intelligence Agency Radio Live. I'm your host, Jack Carey, your tour guide to the Twilight Zone, and I've got a voice for smell-o-vision and a face for milk cartons, and tonight we are exploring the idea that there are portals opening up in areas of the national park system, and those are swallowing people, and it's causing a big furor in paranormal land because there's tons of missing people in our national park system that the scent dogs can't even pick up. Major clue is left to us in all of that. And that's called the berry cluster clue, which I will get to in a moment, which kind of bolsters our argument that what appears to be is this interdimensional activity. Now, I have to remind everybody that I did write a book called Paranormal Planet, and in Paranormal Planet, I present my unified field theory of paranormal activity, in which it states that there are only two types of paranormal activity. One is interaction of the Earth with a Type 3 society, which has already colonized the galaxy. That is a theory I developed assuming that Enrico Fermi, the famous scientist, was correct in his supposition and his equations that if you really calculate it, at least one world, one civilization, one society, one species somewhere in our galaxy would have evolved to be advanced enough that they could have, would have, should have, and did colonize the entire Milky Way galaxy. They run the show, whoever they are. And they are interacting with the Earth in such a way that they appear to be farming it. And we appear to be its prized herd. Another little surprise for whoever's come. On top of that, we've got the the Congresswoman, Anna Paulina Luna, saying that she was shown documentation that states unequivocally that this stuff is coming from another dimension. The beings are from another dimension. You plug in the alien abduction phenomenon into that. Let's take it on the premise that she's right. They are interdimensional, and then let's look at the alien abduction phenomenon. And what do we see? We see abductees coming back, telling Dr. David M. Jacobs over at Tulane University over a 40-year period that the aliens had told them that they were trying to make a hybrid species which was capable of living on this planet, and that it took them 8 generations of hybrid beings, 8 generations before they were able to produce a hybrid that looked sufficiently like us that we couldn't tell the difference. And that those hybrids are neurologically superior to humans. In other words, they are able to control human action, emotion, everything within a given range. We're not quite sure what that range is, but given this premise that we're going to work with tonight, that Congresswoman Luna is correct, as she stated on Joe Rogan, I wanted to present to you guys an actual FBI memo, acquired through the FOIA request, dated 1947. This was just this was, August 6, 1947. So you're talking about just days after Roswell. This memo was generated within the FBI. And it states the following. Keep in mind, when I'm reading this, what Anna Paulina Luna just told us. Quote, a very serious situation may develop at any time with regard to the flying saucers. If one of those should be attacked, the attacking plane will almost certainly be destroyed. In the public mind, this might create near panic and international suspicion. Sorry, it's pretty. This document's pretty old. The principal data concerning these craft is now at hand and must be offered, no matter how fantastic and unintelligible it may seem to minds not previously instructed in thinking of this type. Number 1, part of the disk carry crews, others are under remote control. Point 2, their mission is peaceful. The visitors contemplate settling on this plane. Point 3, these visitors are human-like, but either much larger sometimes and much smaller in size. Interesting. Point 4, they are not excarnate Earth people, but come from their own world. In other words, these aren't ghosts. They come from a place. Point 5, they do not, in all capitals, come from any planet as we use this word, but from an etheric planet which interpenetrates with our own and is not perceptible to us. That's extremely important. Point 6, the bodies of the visitors and the craft also automatically materialize on entering the vibratory rate of our dense matter. Point 7, the disk possess a type of radiant energy or a ray which will easily disintegrate any attacking ship. They re-enter the etheric at will and so simply disappear from our vision without a trace. That's exactly what we record 1,000,000 times a day now on our little phones as we walk around the planet. These UFOs blinking in and blinking out. Point 8, the region from which they come is not, all capitals, the astral plane, but corresponds to the locus or the talus. Students of esoteric matters will understand these terms. Number 9, they probably cannot be reached by radio, but probably can by radar, if a signal system can be devised for that. And it goes on to say, we give information and warning and can do no more. Let the newcomers be treated with every kindness unless the discs are withdrawn, and it's heavily redacted at this point. A heavy responsibility rests upon the few in authority who are able to understand this matter. That's the end of the document. So here you have an actual FBI memo dated days after Roswell in which they make a number of statements that they're quite certain about. And one of those certainties is the fact that these things were coming from another dimension. So that should kind of narrow down the possibilities and probabilities for us. And on top of that, it appears as though we're living on a planet that has a mechanism built within its very structure that allows for the opening of interdimensional doorways. Now, this mechanism is referred to as the Mach effect. It's also referred to as the Woodward effect, and I write about the experimentations done by scientists in which they were able to take a mass of matter, a ball of matter, and show that as it was traveling through space, it had minute fluctuations, right? That's important because those minute fluctuations create energy, and that energy can be tapped into as a type of 0-point energy. In other words, motion can feed off of motion. You ever hear the saying, a ball in motion tends to stay in motion, a body in motion tends to stay in motion? Well, that's kind of the same idea, but taken up a level. There's a scientist out there who created what today is called the Mach effect thruster. And he believes it will be the engine for interstellar travel. So he's devised a way that you can take advantage of the minute fluctuations in a spacecraft and harness those as a type of energy. That's making a long scientific story short. Well, it occurred to me that what you have on the planet here on Earth is a massive body. It's traveling through space. As it's doing so, it too is having minute fluctuations. Those minute fluctuations are causing quartz crystal deposits within the planet to become compressed. And when they do, they become ionized. And when you ionize quartz crystal, you get it to emit electromagnetic fields that are strong enough that they can open interdimensional doorways. And you get intermittent activity between dimensions, and when you do, we describe that as being paranormal. That is one of the major sources. So, as this all lines up, it appears as though we're dealing with an interdimensional species, and I've often wondered, like I was mentioning earlier in Cryptid Corner, are there interdimensional cryptids? See how that ties in? Because if there are interdimensional cryptids, some of them may be predatory in nature, and some of them may be able to utilize these natural doorways to pop in and out of our existence and take people with them when they go. That's a scary possibility. I mentioned earlier that the missing 411 cases, which are all the rage in paranormal world because of their mysterious nature, and I wrote a book talking about all of this called The Devil's Key. It is available on Amazon by Jack Carey, so check it out if you want to do a deep dive into this subject. But in all of the missing 411 cases, if you read every case file, and I have, I've read all of the books and seen the movies produced by Paulides, but in all of those cases, one clue really sticks out to me, and that's from the what's known as the Berry Picker cluster of missing people. So an inordinate number of people who have gone out picking wild berries have disappeared, vanished without a trace. No scent, no body is ever found, nothing. They're just gone. They just vanish. And that's interesting, right? Because of the commonality of the berries being present. But in all of those clues, in this berry cluster grouping of people that went missing, there's one really important clue. And that was a family, a mother, father, and a young boy who were picking berries. And the young boy kind of wanders around some trees where his parents can't see him. And they hear him begin to scream or yell, and then it sounded like it got muffled. They ran right around that little group of trees that was just feet away, and he was gone. He's never been seen since. Nobody's ever been discovered. He vanished without a trace. Scent dogs couldn't pick up the scent. And I argue there's only a couple of things that can cause the muffling of a voice. One, I suspect, is a hand that went over the mouth, possibly like a Sasquatch running off with the child. Two, the child stepped off into another dimension and it just sucked him in and he was gone in an instant. And after the photographs I received from Yosemite today, where the largest cluster of missing people actually has occurred, is in Yosemite National Park, it's very interesting. What are the odds that what was photographed on that trail, which appears to be a portal to another dimension? I mean, you couldn't come up with a better image of what would look like a portal to another dimension on this trail. What is the possibility that that's not the thing responsible? In other words, I mean, how many different kinds of homicidal paranormal activity could be taking place in a park that has more than one source? That's the question you have to ask yourself as an investigator, because, if you've got portals opening and you've got your physicist telling you that things live on those other dimensions and that it's quite possible they figured out a way into this one, and you've got an FBI memo that's saying that that's exactly what's happened, really, the math is beginning to add up in a very interesting and unexpected way. So I can elaborate a little more on the FBI memo because there have been some ufologists out there like Dr. Jacques Vallée who have come across some documentation that states that when we detonated our first nuclear bombs, the testing that we did in the desert Southwest actually damaged this other world that these interdimensional aliens live on. In other words, it's like we share the same point in space, but they're just one dimension over. But when you explode a nuclear weapon, there's something so powerful about that it actually can cause damage on the other dimension. And that's what happened. We blew up something here, it damaged their world here. Now they've come into our dimension, to this planet, looking to colonize it as peacefully as they can, and they feel like they are entitled to do so because us dumb cavemen damaged their world. That's the scenario that plays itself out. Given that, them jumping over from this other world means they had genetics that were fit for that dimension. So what do? They begin to study our genetics. They begin to mix the two. They begin to come up with so-called soul containers, which is what they refer to them as, that can sustain living on this plane of existence. They then come up with an entire breeding program of hybrid creatures, and they are introducing them into our society. That is clear from the alien abductees that have come back and have given us their testimony. So all of this is playing out in a very much like an X-Files type of episode, and yet it's all real. Now, how many people in your life right now that you can think of in normie land with the white picket fences and all that would even begin to entertain the notion that all of that is real? Because until they do, they're setting themselves up for severe ontological shock. An ontological shock they will not survive. The human species is a delicate thing. Human society is even more delicate. and we live in a carefully constructed illusion. It won't take much for that first domino to fall. Not much. And so we find ourselves again back at the Webbot prophecies, and we find ourselves again back to the summer of emergence. We find ourselves back to this whole prediction that the money that has been used to keep all of this a secret has basically dried up, and you're beginning to see whistleblower after whistleblower after whistleblower show up. And the people that were being compensated to keep it a secret are slowly not being compensated anymore. That is the actual on-the-ground mechanics of what ends up causing disclosure as it is predicted by the Webbot. The secret machine runs out of money, and when it does, it stops the secrecy. That's really what it comes down to. But at the same time, we appear to be living in a self-revealing ontology. In other words, the universe shares a relationship with every species, including us, and is intent on revealing itself and its true nature to those species. We are included in that, and we have to remember that from an ontological, universal point of view, the great creator, if you will, the architect of this reality matrix, put us in a position to acquire exotic technology from another dimension that over time is going to leapfrog our species in a way that nothing else ever would. It will turbocharge our species evolution in a way that nothing else ever could. And it could very well be, because the nature of the universe is one of seeking out so-called novelty. In other words, what the universe wants, what the creator of the universe wants, is exotic, new, unique experiences. It will do whatever it takes to acquire those experiences. And it doesn't much care about what happens if a world gets destroyed here or a species there or whatever. That doesn't matter. What matters is that new, unique types of experiences for life are experienced within this reality matrix. And yeah, that touches on philosophy and all kinds of things, but like I said, these rabbit holes get pretty deep. You have to remember we are in the upswing of the Kali Yuga on the Great Space Roller Coaster. And the upswing of the Kali Yuga is an interesting thing. You know, the Kali Yuga is a cyclical thing that goes back to Vedic astrology, and it shows planetary cycles. You can think of it very easily like the Earth being over here, and there's a cloud of debris over here, and that debris is blocking us from our galactic center, which is a huge amount of mass, right? It also emits a signal every so often, this galactic center, that goes out and it affects life on all the planets. Well, this debris is blocking us part of that time, and every time it blocks us from those signals, we end up going through a downswing, which leads to dark ages. It leads to devolution instead of evolution. It leads to a downward swing of human society altogether. You come back around, and our planet's going like this, up and below the cloud. And every time it pops up, it gets beamed by those rays. And every time it pops down, it gets beamed by those rays. And when you do, all kinds of wonderful things happen. The human species goes through a blooming, a burgeoning, a golden age where we would think of humans as being almost superhuman. Think of it as the species, again, acquiring super intelligence, super strength, super abilities that are all emanating from the special signal that comes from the galactic center. that's what we have to look forward to. But in the interim, we are going through a very turbulent period it has a lot of danger. So if we can make it out the other side with our wits intact and without dying from ontological shock, we're going to be hell in this universe. So we're going to be a species that we'll have to be contended with. So that's the interesting and exotic situation that sets itself up for humanity, and that's the novelty that we're about to give the universe. And join me next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central, and we'll explore another deep, dark rabbit hole. Stay tuned for the wonderful Nancy Planeta and Vixen's Vault. I'll see you then.